Sengoku is Paradox Interactive's rather lovely, pausable, grand strategy game, based around feudal Japan in the Sengoku area between 1467 and the mid-1600s. 200 years of interesting gameplay with a lot of clan options. Now, just a quick note from my previous review, I'll try to put a link to that in this video and a link to this and that. I reviewed March of the Eagles and some people said that there was too many gaps, so I'm going to try and speak fluently all the way through, and some people recommended Fraps. I'm not currently using Fraps, but I might consider it. I'm having a look at what it's about, and I think I've heard it mentioned by some other people. So on to the actual game. I'm going to assume that you know at least a bit about Paradox Interactive or the genre, because this is more of a quick overview rather than going in depth into every aspect of the game. Unlike other Paradox games, here you have a set goal to win. It's not just you doing what you feel like, it's more you have to take over 50% of Japan specifically, 50% of the provinces, and keep control of them for 3 years to become shogun and just win. I quite like having this system in some Paradox games because it drives you to just take risks and go out there and just battle and fight and try and take over land quickly, rather than having... It's a more light-hearted experience, I suppose you could say. Rather than being weighed down by a million things, this offers an occasional simpler experience when you don't fancy the thing that Victoria 2 or EU3 offers, with more complicated, sit down and work at it for hours. You could do this, just get into it, play it for an hour, and then just decide to go out and fight another clan without risking total annihilation if you make the mistakes. This game debuted a lot of the technology and the ideas that went into Crusader Kings 2. It has a vassal system which is handled better here, I think, because they're less likely to rebel and you don't need them as much. They're rawer, and the skill systems and the leader system, there's a lot of intrigue going about, a lot of war going about, except here there's no casus belli. You just declare war on someone and the allies come in and you fight, and there's very little alliances as well. I don't like the fact that it's dumbed down, but I will say it's incredibly fun to just quickly build up your clan. It's also surprisingly fun to play as a vassal of someone and rebel against them or help them. And pretty much every clan, as you can see here, there's so many of them and they're all playable throughout 2 starting periods, which changes it quite a bit. Most of them are fairly legitimate choices for a fun game. There are a couple tiny ones that might be harder, but in the end doesn't just pose a greater challenge if you want that thing. If you don't want a challenge, there's easier ones to pick, and it's got an almost infinite replayability, something you won't find in March of the Eagles. I will say, however, that it feels a bit raw and unrefined. There are issues like I feel the graphics are a bit plain, a bit greyish. That's more personal opinion though. I also feel that the game doesn't tell you enough when things happen. Sometimes your vassals can rebel, start their own country, and you don't even know about it. You know, there's no way to find out how many people you're at war with, rather than just remembering. These is really a bit nitpicky, but it does make a big difference when something happens. You've been focusing on your war, you come back to find your entire nation's been taken over. Another aspect is that when you take over a province, or your enemy does in this game, it instantly goes to you or your enemy, rather than going into a kind of mixed state like in many other Paradox games where you have to take it in the piece before you acquire it. The diplomatic system is a bit cut down, sadly. I think this is generally more based around the war aspect, and if you enjoy that, you might enjoy this more. And you know, if you don't like this, you could still probably pick it up cheap on Steam and just enjoy it for a little while. Especially the history aspects and the fact that there's a lot of building and investment and your vassals are competent. I will say that you do need to make sure to keep to your 5 province limit. Other provinces over 5, you have to let your vassals rule under you. I'd recommend sticking to that because there's a huge revolt risk that comes in when you go over that, and it could really cripple your country to have revolts going on all over the place. I was quoted as saying that in many ways March of the Eagles is better than this in my March of the Eagles review. And that's true. But I'm still going to give it, I think, the same score of 7. I might have given March of the Eagles 8, I might have given it 7. I'm going to give it the same score of 7 because there's one thing that March of the Eagles did that this didn't. And that is March of the Eagles kind of lost your idea of building from anew. This, you take over territories, you feel like you're building up your armies and you're getting better and everything's progressing, whereas in March of the Eagles the only statistics that were really better were the statistics themselves, if that makes sense. The only things that got better were the numbers, but you didn't feel it. Here you feel that you start off with 500 men and some villages, and now you rule an empire. It really does give an amazing sense of just taking over, and it's got a lot of Japanese history in it. Like you can be forced to commit seppuku, and there's all this honor systems. Honor is a really good currency that goes up and down wildly, rather than just acquiring it like money. And in some ways, it's more important than money because honor determines what you can do, and certain actions require honor, and certain actions cost honor and give honor. I've been going on for 6 minutes, and I could really go further, but I feel I want to wrap this up by saying that if you want an experience more light-hearted and more war-organised, then you'll probably enjoy this. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I give it a frustration meter of 4, my anger meter as I call it. It's also a frustration meter, I'll refer to them as both. 4 because it doesn't tell you when something happens, and that is a big fault. It's cheap on Steam, it's cheaper than March of the Eagles. If you want something like March of the Eagles or like Crusader Kings 2, but simpler and purer, this may be the game for you. And it's cheap on Steam, and if you pre-ordered March of the Eagles, then if you did that, you'd get this for free anyway, and that's how I got it. In some ways, a less good game, but again, it captures the true spirit of feudal Japan.